Good morning. For those of you who are joining me this morning, actually I might take a layer off this morning. So today I have plenty of props around. I've put down a padding for underneath me. We're on the floor a lot and lying a little bit perhaps onto our side, and so hard floor can feel a little uncomfortable. So get yourself super comfy, cushion, blanket, blocks if you've got them, or a couple of books to lean onto for a couple of the poses, or to rest your thighs onto as we come into some of our twists. So we want to work today on the outer hip area, which attaches into the IT band down the leg and into the glute muscles, and we'll get into the hip flexors as well. So kind of making our way around what in yoga we often call the mandala of the hip. So going around in a circular movement. We're going to do all the poses on one side to start with, and then on the other, and then we'll come into seated and do another couple of postures at the end. So grab your props, have them ready, and let's get going here. Start down onto your backs. As I said, have your props within range. So just bend the knees, press into the feet, lengthen the tailbone down towards the back of the knees so that you're not crunching into the lower back. Let the knees just fall together here. Take a couple of moments here just to settle into our practice, just to let go of whatever effort it's taken to get here. If you're practicing with me in the morning, then the body could feel quite different to if you're practicing in the afternoon. And often it's quite a good idea to come back and revisit classes at different times of the day. Notice anywhere in your body that's kind of tensing or holding. Could be around the glutes and the legs, or maybe it's into the shoulders and the jaw. Soften any tensing around the eyes. And then we're going to reach the legs out long and take the feet about the width of the mat. And then we're going to slide that left foot across towards the right one. It might meet the right one, it might not quite make it there, but we're just looking for a little bit of length and some tension into that left side. Left outer leg, it might not feel like a huge amount yet. And we're going to add the upper body, so use the elbows and the head and shoulders just to walk you into this curved banana shape. As you take the upper body over towards the right, you're going to feel an added layer of tension in around the side and probably around that outer hip area. And you've got the option to cross the ankles or not here. So the left one crossing over the right is going to probably add a little more tension. The right one over the left might just make you feel like you're anchoring a little more. Watch that you're not rolling the hip, the left hip over to the right. Keep both hips down on the floor. If that's lifting, then adjust so that you can flatten out again. And then we're going to reach the arms up overhead, so they could just reach up overhead in a kind of a Y shape. You could take the left arm across towards the right and hold the elbow with the right hand, or the left wrist. If your arms don't come to the floor and they're kind of hovering in space, then I want you to put some blocks or some cushions in underneath the arms so that the arms are completely supported. Now, if any of this doesn't feel great on the lower back, then I would just work with the legs rather than taking the upper body into this shape. So we don't want any pinching. We are shortening into the right side and opening into the left, but anyone with any problems in the discs, then you might just want to be really mindful and careful here. Anyone with any ankle issues, then probably better to not cross the ankles, just to let the legs rest onto the floor. The head could drop over towards the left or the right, or maybe it just stays with the back of the head on the floor. And then just connect into the breath. Feel the inhale, feel the exhale. As we breathe in, the tissues expand on the breath, creating often a little bit more tension. And as we breathe out, it's an opportunity to soften, to let go a little more. If space starts to open up for you and you lose what we call the edge or the feeling of a change in the tissue or a pull in the tissue, then you can sneak in a little deeper. Maybe you take the left arm a little further to the right. And the opposite, if things start to show up that feel too much, then just back off a little. Now in practice, we want to feel this edge, this feeling of sensation, which is either a tension, a lengthening of the tissues, or a compression, a closing of the tissues. We want it to be not too much, but not too little. Something that we can breathe into and that we can stay with. And then we want to see if we can find stillness, resisting the urge to adjust or fidget as things maybe start to amp up a little, but always adjusting if that amping up is painful. And if you do adjust, whether you're going deeper or whether you're backing away, really just think about why. What is it you're needing to shift or change? Is it physical tension? Is it emotional? Often we can feel a little agitated and irritated in poses, and our body starts to protest a little. And also in our yin, we're working on lots of these energy lines and channels in the body that we're opening, which hold both positive and negative emotions. Perhaps not so much negative, maybe challenging emotions. So all of those sensations can arise. See if you can soften, check in with the glutes and the quads, see that you're not tensing. Check in and see that the belly is soft, that the breath is moving right down low into the belly. Scanning along that left side from the ankle to the hip, and from the hip to the armpit, and the armpit to the elbow. Just noticing where you feel the most amount of sensation. And see if you can imagine that you could direct your breath into that space. Just 2 more breaths here. Perhaps you let one of those breaths be a sigh out the mouth. And then so slowly support the arm to bring it back over alongside the body, and that could be lifting it up, it could be sliding it along the floor, feeling into any niggles, any sensation. If we rush, we often lose those, and that's when we hurt ourselves. If the ankles are crossed, just uncross and let that left leg just land. No hurry. Allow the tissues to respond to that. Then using the elbows and the head and shoulders to walk yourself back in line with the hips. Gently going to just bend the knees, bring the soles of the feet to the floor. You can line the feet back up with the hips. Go slow. It can feel really tender as those tissues contract. And then press into the feet. You're just going to lift the hips and slide them over towards the left side. Here's where you might want some props over towards the right. You're going to take the arms out in line with the shoulders or into that goalpost shape and lift the knees up and towards the chest. I'm going to drop the knees over towards the right and keep the left shoulder down. So if the left shoulder starts to lift up, then use more props. Maybe you put a block between the knees or a cushion between the knees. You could bend the left elbow and rest the hand onto the rib cage. Either let the head just rest as is or turn the gaze over towards the right. Sometimes it's quite nice to use the right hand as an anchor, but not to pull. We don't pull or force in yin, but sometimes just to rest the hand onto that outer left thigh can feel good. So now we're starting to lengthen and open up the tissues in around the glutes, getting a nice opening into the lower back, into the lats, across the front of the chest and in around the ribs. If this left shoulder really wants to lift up, you can pop a prop, a cushion in under the arm so that the arm's got somewhere to land. We don't want to compromise one area to deepen another area, so don't force the knees down to the floor at the cost of the shoulder. Now the higher the knees come up towards the right shoulder, the more intensity you'll feel. So if you feel too much, just move the knees a little further away from the shoulder. And because we stay in our poses for lots of time, there's no need to rush, no need to force or push, go too deep, too quick. So feel the weight of the knees dropping towards the right, and then the weight of the left shoulder. Letting gravity take over. Now, there's an option here, and it is just an option, that you draw the chin a little closer towards the chest on the right, and then you could look at turning the head so that the gaze is looking towards the left. And that way we're getting a twist into the spine, including the neck. And I want you to really think about whether that's the right thing for your neck. So if you try it on and it doesn't feel right, and you can't relax and you're tensing around it, then please just back away. And then in this shape, see if you can soften the hip and the glute that you're lying onto. That will often want to tense up. Soften the shoulders. If the hand is resting onto the rib cage, then really feel the expansion of the ribs as you breathe in and out. Seeing if you can invite the breath just to lengthen, even just a second. If space is opening up and you feel like you've got a little bit more room to deepen, then by all means just draw the knees a little higher. It might be a millimetre. It might be just that you direct the breath into an area. And the opposite, if it's feeling too much, just back away. mind starts to wander off into planning mode. If you can come back to the breath or scan the body for sensation. Two more breaths here, and sigh the exhale out through the mouth and feel the body drop as you breathe out. And then support the leg, start to lift that left leg, and it's going to feel tender as you come out. Lift that left leg, the foot come back to the floor. And the right leg. Shift the hips back in line with the shoulders. Just take the feet a little wider than the hips and just let the knees fall together for a moment. If it feels good for you to take a little bit of movement, maybe you can shimmy the hips from side to side as if you're trying to reach your hip point up to the armpit. On opposite sides, you could windshield wiper the knees from side to side. And then just pause for a breath. Feeling the echo of the pose. What's left over? What's still going on? Is there any sensations, any heat, any cold, any thought? And then walk the feet back in line with the sit bones. We're going to hug that left leg in towards you. Just take a pause here, let the shoulders feel heavy. Even give the head a little rock from side to side to check that you're not tensing into the neck. Cross the left ankle over the right thigh. Now this could be enough. For some of us this could be plenty. Otherwise the option is to start to draw that right knee in towards you, hold on behind the leg. This is also a great pose that you could go to a wall, or you could put your foot up onto a chair so that you've got a resting place if it feels too much or your arms don't want to reach the leg. If it feels okay, you can also hold on around the shin, just below the knee. Don't go too low down the leg. If you go too low down the leg, usually we start to move the knees away from us. So just right in around the knee or just below. And then just explore for yourself in any of these positions by gently widening that right knee out to the right a little further and back to center. And see if you can find your best edge, a place for you on that left side that feels like you're inviting change, but it doesn't feel so strong that you're holding your breath or that you're tensing and gripping around the sensation. Just looking for enough. And then soften. Check the breath. It's our first indication if we are overdoing, if we're going too deep, then we often will tense and hold the breath. Anyone with any knee issues, then you will want to flex the toes and make that left foot a little more active. Completely soften that right foot. For those of you with, as I said, any ankle issues, that foot could rest up onto a chair. so that you feel supported. And even though we're reaching the arms around the leg, make sure that you're not gripping and tensing the shoulders as well. Make sure that the chin isn't lifting up and the back of the neck isn't shortening. If that's the case, then you can pop a cushion or a block in under the head so that the chin and the throat are closing a little rather than opening. It keeps a nice long neck and keeps the cervical vertebra nice and safe. Now often the body will try and sneak away from sensation once we start to zone out. So see if again you can just play around and find the best sensation for you. And best may mean more and best may mean less. Two more breaths in this shape. We're going to keep the left ankle as is, but just release that right foot back to the floor if it's not there already. Press into the right foot. And often it's a good idea to use the elbows just to support you, to lift the hips and slide them over towards that left side. And then just start to heel toe your right foot across towards the left. And we're going to slide the left knee over the right thigh. So we're in that cross-legged position. Take the arms out in line with the shoulders again. Have your props handy, so we still want to keep our left shoulder down towards the floor, but drop our knees over towards the right. And I want you to keep the knees in this shape, don't bring them high yet, but drop the knees over towards the right. Maybe you put a block. When we keep the knees a little further away from the shoulder, we get a little more into the outer hip, and we'll deepen and go for the glutes shortly. So resting the left hand onto the right thigh can feel good. Onto the rib cage, and the right hand onto the thigh if that's there for you. Otherwise, again, gaze towards the right side rather than to the left. A cushion could come in under the left shoulder. Soften the glute that you're lying over towards. You might be much higher. You could have cushions and blocks and props to lift those legs away from the floor if you're feeling too much. And if you don't need it, you can take them away. What you do want to watch when you take props away, that often will tense up and grip. So just sometimes having a little bit of support allows all of the muscles around the glutes to soften. They feel as if there's a safe landing place. Whereas if they're hovering, they start to fatigue and tighten. We start to get the muscles involved, and we don't want to get the muscles involved. We want to use that connection into the fascia, into the ligaments and tendons. Turn off the muscles. Sending breath into anywhere where you feel like there's tension. Even if the breath isn't really making it there, Just sending our awareness into tissues is going to increase that blood supply, start to create a change. Now I'm going to see how it feels for you to start to bring the knees a little higher. And as we do that, I want you to feel into where the tension changes. So starting to draw the knees up a little more, and probably going to need more support as you bring the knees up. If that doesn't feel great for you, you can uncross that top leg and stack the legs together, and usually when you do that you can bring the knees a little higher. Watch that you're not compromising the left shoulder. Keep that shoulder down. Hand can rest onto the ribs, the right hand can rest onto the thigh or just out on the floor. Again, soften through the neck, make sure you're not gripping or tensing. And we'll keep our head turning towards the right or just resting the back of the head on the floor. So we open up into the neck here as well on the left side. Check that you're not tensing that right glute, the right outer hip. Any point it feels too much, then you can slide the knees away or uncross the legs. Anytime you feel like there's more space opening up, then you can lift the knees a little higher. Just watch the urge to force and push and grasp for more. These long, slow, fairly gentle pulls on the tissues that are going to make the changes to our fascia. Next 2 breaths, sigh them out. And then slowly uncross that left leg, and it can feel tender, so you might want to use the hand to support you. Pause for a breath and support the left leg to bring it back to the floor. Click and pop. Making your way back over onto your back. Shift the hips back in line with the shoulders. Widen the feet out. Let the knees just fall together for a moment. And then, if it feels good for you, you can rock the knees from side to side. Go slow, really feeling into the tissues. Noticing any difference between the left side and the right side, the movement or the freedom that you have. Is there any difference here after opening through the left, compressing the right, and then take the legs out long. Taking a moment to let all this information download. Feeling into the sensations, any movement under the tissues. feel any different left to right for you? Is there any difference in the weight of the left leg in comparison to the weight of the right leg? Maybe one leg feels a little longer. And then pop any props that you might need over, this time to the left. So that they're in range. Widen the feet out so that they're about the width of the mat. And then we'll slide the right foot across to meet the left, or in that direction. Maybe it gets there, maybe it doesn't. And support yourself to shimmy the shoulders over to the left as well, creating this banana shape. The pose is actually called banana asana, so banana is the shape. Asana in yoga or Sanskrit means to a seat or a posture. And bring the arms up overhead, taking any support you might need. The forearms can cross. The left hand might hold the elbow or the wrist so that the tension is a little more in around the armpit and the back of the arm. And then crossing the ankles, left over right or right over left, you choose what feels right for you, but don't let that right hip lift up. Anything that feels too much in the lower back might mean that you just leave the upper body out of the shape and work into the lower body. Finding a position for your neck that feels as if the neck can completely relax. As you exhale, really soften. Begin to let go of any holding, any tensing. You want to imagine that your body becomes so heavy on those exhales that it's going to leave your imprint, this curved shape, into the floor. Completely supported. Make sure you're not tensing the glutes, they'll often sneak on, and the quads. Deepening if it feels right for you to do that, or backing away if it feels too much. Slowly feeling all the feedback the body's giving you as you come out. Maybe you use the left hand to bring the right arm up and over. Maybe you just slide that arm alongside the body. Walk the shoulders back in line with the hips. Just pause and cross the ankles if they're crossed. And then we're going to start to bend the knees, and the feet are on that little angle. That's okay, just bring them back in line with the sitting bones. Press the elbows into the floor as a little support for you. Press the feet into the floor and then slide the hips across towards the right. And take the arms out in line with the shoulders. Lift the knees in towards the chest, and then taking whatever props you need to land those knees and thighs onto as you drop them to the left. Again, don't compromise the shoulder. This shape is not a good shape for the shoulder. It's going to pinch into the front of the chest. So lift the knees higher if the shoulder starts to lift up, or take some support under the shoulder. You can have a block or cushions between the knees, under the knees, or both. Soften the hip that you're lying onto. Make sure you're not gripping or tensing. That right hand could rest onto the rib cage, which is also a nice way to connect into the breath. Both hands could rest onto the ribs. Where you can feel the expansion of the breath as you breathe in, and the contraction and dropping as you breathe out. And then turn the gaze towards the left and just let the chin move down towards the shoulder. And this is where you could stay, or because we've moved the chin towards the shoulder, we've created a little more space to turn the head over towards the right. Try that on, and if it feels like it pinches or pulls, definitely back away. The higher the knees move up towards the left shoulder, the more you'll probably feel in around the glute. Getting a nice stretch into the piriformis muscle, which is where our sciatic nerve runs underneath, sometimes through, sometimes over the top, but usually underneath. You get this nice opening into the lower back, and around the rib cage, into the pec muscle in the front of the chest. Just connect into the weight of the knees on the left side, and the opposite weight of the shoulder on the right side. See if you can let gravity take over. Get a lovely twist in through the abdominals, assisting us with our digestion, changing the breath. And if the head is turned either left or right, gently start to bring the back of the head back onto the floor. You could use your left hand to help guide that right leg back and over towards the right. And then the left foot Slide the hips back in line with the shoulders. Just let the knees fall together here. Feet a little wider. And you could rock the knees from side to side in that windshield wiper movement, starting small and growing bigger. Or the other option, which feels quite good, is sometimes to slide that left hip point up towards the left armpit and then the right side. So you're shortening and opening the opposite side. Rock from side to side, just a bit of movement. Or if stillness feels right for you, it's also a perfect place to pause. And then walk the feet back in line with the sit bones. We're going to cross this time the right ankle over the left thigh. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you bring your foot to the wall or onto a chair. Maybe the hands come in behind the thigh. Thread through that little triangular space that we've made with the legs. Now, if you start to lift the chin and open the throat, then it's a great idea, as I said on the other side, to put a prop in under the head. You can also hold on around the shin, just below the knee. Same thing here, just watch that you're not grasping or forcing your way into what you think is a deeper shape. We're all so different. What one body can do, another can't, and it may have absolutely nothing to do with your flexibility. It could be the shape of your bones, the length of your legs, the length of your arms, your torso. So don't push or force. Soften the shoulders, and then just playing around with widening that left knee out to the side, so you're getting a little rock from side to side until you feel like you find a place in your body, especially around that right glute, that's giving you a little bit of info, saying, hey, I can feel some tension here. Make sure you can still breathe. Breath in and breath out, slow, full inhales and slow, long exhales. I like the analogy of an orthodontist here with our facial tissue. That we put braces on the teeth and make tiny little adjustments so that the teeth straighten out. And if we try to move them any quicker than they're ready, or we were just to pull them into shape, the teeth will fall out, we break them. So think of the tissues a little like the teeth. Tiny, slow movements, long held. You can't rush it, you can't rush the change without causing problems. So if you feel like you're trying to straighten your teeth too quickly, back away. Ease off a little. The shoulders, let go of any tensing around the forehead or gripping around the eyes. Even give the jaw a little wiggle from side to side, soften the jaw. 2 more breaths here. Ever so slowly. Release that left foot back down to the floor. Just pause. You're going to slide that right leg all the way across over onto the left thigh. Press into the left foot and pick up the hips and slide them over towards the right. Maybe you just heel toe that left foot across towards the right as well. Having any props that you might need. So here we keep the foot to the floor and just drop the knees over towards the left. Not bringing them too high at this stage so we get more into the outer hip. All of the props that we had in our first twist would be great here. Under the shoulder. If you needed it, the arm can reach out long or it can rest onto the rib cage. Left hand on the floor, onto the ribs or onto the outer thigh. Not to pull, not to force, just to anchor you. Connect into the breath, feel the expansion of the rib cage. Soften the left hip, the left glute. How does your breath move in this shape? Which parts of the body can you feel expanding and opening? Which parts of the body do you feel dropping or contracting or squeezing a little closer together as you exhale? Option that we start to draw the knees up a little higher towards the left armpit. It's going to add more tension and change the tension. So if it feels too much with the legs tangled around each other, just uncross the legs and stack them together. Often you can come a little higher. And the legs are twisted around each other. It gives a different layer of tension which can feel really strong for a lot of people. Watch the shoulder, keep that down. And then because when we adjust and shift, we have to turn muscles on. So if you can turn them off again. And grip the glutes, relax the quads, soften the jaw, the throat. And we'll turn our head to look towards the left. So we get into this muscle along the side of the neck. Notice where the tissues kind of cross over and change direction and around the abdominal region from the diaphragm and the ribs upwards. The tissue is drawing across towards the right, and from the diaphragm down, the tissue is pulling across towards the left. Seeing if you can make your exhale just a little longer here from that squeeze we get in the crossing of the tissue. more scan. See if there's anywhere that is snuck on and gripped and tightened. If you can soften. Gently roll the head back to neutral. As you exhale, just feel the abdominal muscles tone and hold that tone as you uncross the legs. Pause. You could use your left hand to support that right leg. And these tissues on the outer hip and outer thigh are going to contract, and they can feel tender. Rolling back over onto your back. Line the hips back up with the shoulders. Take a couple of breaths here. And then draw the knees in towards you. Give the body a little rock from side to side. And then we're going to roll over onto a side and come on over into a seated position. I'm going to get you to have a prop to sit onto. And your blocks or something to lean onto. So just lift up enough that you can slide your cushion over towards the left side a little. And then you're going to tuck the feet so they sit over towards the right. Bring the right shin parallel to the edge of the mat and the left shin parallel to the front of the mat. Now for some of you, this outer thigh is not going to rest on the floor. So pop a prop in and underneath and just pause here. I want you to see if, even if you're leaning slightly towards the left, which many bodies will be, leaning over this way, take support, take a prop if you need it to lean into, but see if you can soften all of this hip area and let that right sitting bone feel as if it wants to sink towards the floor, not through force. Remember the analogy of our orthodontist, our braces. We don't want to push it down and force it. Just see if you can soften. So this could be plenty. This might be where you stay. For some of you, you might be able to start to lean forward a little. Hands could come to the floor, hands could be on your blocks. I want you to keep the chest lifted to start with so that you're not rounding. We're going to start to look for some sensation in around this left glute, left outer hip. Maybe you stay here. You could turn slightly, leaning over towards the right side, and the torso can lean towards the left, so you're getting a little curve again. But we're looking for sensation in around the outer left hip and into the glute. So for some of you, that might mean you need to come lower. The things that you might notice if you're overdoing it is that your hands would grip, your shoulders would tense, your jaw will tighten. So if all of that is happening, just back off a little bit. Take that block out. If you've got more props, you can come up higher. Being upright is absolutely a great place to be if you're already feeling enough. If it feels like a lot, you can turn the torso a little more towards the left, which would take some tension off. Or you can turn the torso a little more towards the right, which will bring some tension on. Or you can come straight through the middle tendency is the body is going to shift a little to the left just because of the position of the legs. We've just got a couple more breaths here. We won't hold this one for too long. And then twice as slow as you think you need to move. Just start to make your way back upright. If you're not already upright. At each stage, as we start to come out of the poses, just pause, feel what changes. And then we're going to lean over to the left. I want you to be really mindful of this right knee and sweep it around so that it stacks over onto the left one. Slide your prop over towards the right glute, the right sit bone. Tuck the feet off towards the left. The left shin starts to become parallel with the edge of the mat, and then the right shin parallel with the edge of the mat. So we're in this shape like a swastika, which in our yoga tradition, the swastika ironically was a symbol of peace rather than a symbol of domination. And the little hooks turn the opposite way. Little piece of information for you. So I want you just to have your right sitting bone onto the cushion and the left one kind of hanging over the edge. Just bring the hands onto the hips and see if you can let that left hip soften. So this could be plenty. This could be where you stay. You could be feeling enough already. You might be leaning off to one side. That's okay. If you are, this left hip is going to lift a little, but see if you can again soften. And then the options are that we start to lean forward, hands on blocks, hands on the floor. If you're looking for a little more sensation, this time we're looking for it to be in the right glute, and there'll be more places. You could be feeling something on the inside of the left leg, into the groin on the left leg. You could be feeling tension and pull into the lower back. So watching all of those places. But if we want to open up into this right glute a little more and outer hip, you can walk the hands over towards the left a little. If that feels too much and everything feels too much, then walk the hands over towards the right, which is going to ease things. Or you can start to lean forward, resting down onto a prop or support. Whichever shape you're in, check on the neck, check on the jaw, check on the tensing of the eyes and the forehead. Soften the shoulders, the hands. Check the breath. If you're holding your breath, you're probably tensing the pose. Just being curious, adding or subtracting as you need to. Making sure you're not forcing, grasping. Softly, softly. Two breaths here, sigh out through the mouth. That often really lets the body drop. And then Making your way back upright, little by little. Feel the tissues contract back again. Slide that left knee around, keeping the knee closed as we slide it over towards the right. Lean back onto the hands, shift your prop underneath you, and just again rock from side to side with the knees. And then we're going to come down into Shavasana, and for Shavasana today, I'd like you to have a cushion that we can place underneath the sacrum or your blanket, something perhaps not as high as our blocks, which we'd often use, or a little mini bridge that we want to do. We've done lots of opening into the glutes and into the outer hip, but the hips also are the front of the body, so press into the feet, lift the hips up, so we take this little bit of elevation in the hips. So we start to open up into the front of the hips here. Making sure that there's not too much compression in the lower back. You can rest the hands onto the body or onto the floor, palms facing up if they're on the floor. So you can see that you're not gripping or tensing. Let the body completely drop. Feel the weight of the arms and the shoulders on the floor. The weight of the head. Soften the muscles of the neck and the throat. Soften the forehead, the eyes, the jaw. Make sure that the glutes are turned off, the legs feel heavy. Feeling as if the skin on the legs wants to fall away from the muscles away from the bones. Like a puddle, spreading. So we're at the hour now. If you have time, then by all means stay in this shape for as long as you can. Otherwise, if it's time to move and you need to get on with whatever's next in the day, just move slowly. The feet would come to the floor. Because we're in this little back bend, I want you to press into the feet and slide the hips across to one side. Roll onto the side and draw the knees up towards the chest. Curl into this fetal shape. And then use the hands to support you if you're coming out now, up into any seated position. Just take a moment, close the eyes, find that length in the spine, and just again feel into what's left over in the body, what's going on in the legs, the hips. Notice the quality of the breath, quality of the mind. Connecting the palms, bring them to touch, thumbs at the heart, and then bowing down to yourselves, honouring yourself for showing up on the mat Namaste.